Stable 9 to 5 was, well, pretty darn close to here, actually, he said. He dug into one of his bags, took out a strange brown cigar, bit off the top, and then took out a brass lighter and lit the end, with that earth pony deftness that I so admired. What they did with their hooves was as magical as what I did with my horn, or what Pegasi did with their wings. Pretty funny stable now that I think about it. Whole place was based on money. Over pony was whatever pony had the most money. Everything was for sale. Everything. You could buy, borrow, rent, lease, exchange, or barter anything and everything you wanted. Sell your kids. Sell yourself. One big endless market of wheeling and dealing. And if you went broke, you were kicked out. And you went broke? Glory asked. Oh, heck no. He broke out in a laugh. Me? Go broke? Why, you're looking at the 3-time over pony of stable 9 to 5. Nah, see, some of us were really good at the game. So we changed the rules. Changed what we wanted and kept most of the stable dirt poor. Good for us. Bad for every pony else. Then some poor pony in 9 to 5, and this was when I wasn't over pony, I must add, figured that out. If they wanted all our comfy things, that they'd have to do was take 'em. So they rounded up about a dozen of us and tossed us right out the door. He rubbed his chin. Maybe that charging ponies for air was going a mite too far. I glanced over at Glory. Really? You think? I smiled. So, what happened then? Well, contrary to popular belief, the hoof back then was a nasty piece of work. Less innovation, but more radiation and constant damned rain. First ponies we ran across were slavers, and 8 of our group sold the other 4. You sold each other? Glory gasped. Now, I know it sounded a bit harsh, but we were buying and selling each other back in 9 to 5 well before all this. Granted, I wasn't too happy to be the one that got shoved into a cage, but it saved my life. I learned a lot from the nomads I was living with. Those 8, well, they might have had some guns, but I never did hear from them again. I made myself useful and was a slave, and within 2 years purchased my freedom from the tribe chief. Got out on my own, hooked up with a ghoul to start our business. I was the handsome face, and she was the set of wings that got us from place to place, while she was hammering out a guide to the wasteland. He groaned and rubbed out his hooves. When I think of her wanting me to sneak into a radgator nest to observe wasteland life, he shivered and shook his head. Eventually, we parted ways. She wanted to sell it for cheap. Me, I fell in with a crazy bunch who'd be my friends. Big Daddy, the professor, you were one of the companions, I said eagerly, and rubbed the tender right side of my head. Companions? You make it sound like it was a big thing. He chuckled. Nah, we were just friends. I figured they'd be handy to hide behind while every pony was shooting at us. They probably would have been dead dozens of times over if it wasn't for me. Did you know that the professor wouldn't loot corpses? Guns, ammo, caps, and chems just left behind before I came along. And Big Daddy wouldn't haggle. Just took whatever price was quoted him. He sighed, took a long pull of the brown wrap, and let out a long stream of rich gray smoke. But they were a good bunch in the world full of bad. I groaned as I rubbed my eye patch. That banged-up feeling wasn't getting any better. In fact, it felt like my sinuses were just pressurized. Great. Getting sick again. What were you all like? At the start, I mean. Glory asked with a smile. Oh, well, that's easy enough. There was me. Big Daddy was about one step away from being a raider. Heck, sometimes not even that. He was one tough sucker. Drank zebra potions like a fiend. Personally, I thought they also shrunk his taters, but I'm no doctor. Then there was the professor, a 10-pony mare, so she was like a stable pony, only worse. Odd duck. Knew the cagiest things, but we didn't have a clue why at the time. Crunching Carrots was an acolyte at the time, and boy, she loved technology. Me and her used to fight for hours over whether it was okay to sell a beam pistol. Then, of course, there was Awesome. Lord Awesome. Crack shot with whatever firearm he got his hooves on. We roamed all up and down Equestria looking for technology to send back to the Rangers. One day we came across some nasty slavers with an actual Pegasus, and not one of them from the clouds neither. Dawn. Shy, quiet, but damn strong. She knew herbs, critters, and the land. But most importantly, she was from Hoofington. Then he gave a sigh. Sometimes I wish we'd never thought of coming out here. Even Philly D isn't as bad as this damned city. But we were young and sure of ourselves, and DJ Pony made us an offer to reestablish contact with the MAS-CBS towers out east. So we trod all the way out here. He gave a sad smile. Might be I was a touch nostalgic for old 95. DJ Pony? Homage didn't look that old. Then again, she also really hadn't looked like the stallion she sounded like, so... Considering everything that was going on, this was pretty low on my list of mysteries. Keeper looked out the window towards the green-rimmed towers of the core. I reckon Crunchy nearly had a heart attack when she saw that the core was still standing. Big Daddy was happy to find new ponies to pound on. Awesome was looking forward to being the biggest damned hero in Equestria. The prof was eager to find some steel pony she once knew. He looked over at Glory. Funny. Dawn and I were the most worried. Me, because I knew there was such a thing as too good to be true. Her, because she knew the hoof. And so you set out to save it? I asked, trying to ignore the throbbing headache. Save it? Fuck no. I set out to plunder it. And you can't imagine how much plunder there was in this place. A cornucopia of caps, bullets, bombs, beams, like half the weapons of the war just here for the taking. Saving the hoof grew up bit by bit. We found Dawn's tribe slaughtered. We kept coming across more and more ugly sights. 95 was gone. Some genius had opened the stable to the outside to trade and discover some nasty locals. He sighed and shook his head. Never would have happened with me as Overpony. No siree. So, what happened? Glory asked. He took another long, slow pull off the cigar. It didn't happen at all at once, mind you, just little things. Maybe all the rain got to us. Maybe the fighting just dragged on and on. Crunchy became a big muckety-muck in the Rangers from the stuff she discovered. Big Daddy was a nightmare of every raider. The professor kept on finding this old data from centuries back, and Awesome was awesome. What can I say? But we weren't making any progress. Hadn't breached the core. Hadn't really accomplished much. It was like the hoof was toying with us. He gave a deep sigh. And it was. What do you mean? Glory asked. I fished out a Med-X while they were talking and sighed in relief. I'd have Lacuna heal my head when she caught up with us. Or when we caught up with her, if my friends hadn't found us by morning. I'm the lootingest looter who ever picked a lock, hacked a terminal, or swept clear a store. I'm the damnedest best acquirer of goods in the wasteland. For the last 30 years, I've been around the hoof 100 times, and I can tell you that I can pick up as much gear today as I could when I first got here. He said grimly. So, what's the problem? I said with a frown. You ain't hearing me. I'm just one of hundreds of scavengers. There's a point where all the good, easy salvage is stripped away. That ain't the case in the hoof, though. He pointed a cigar at a row of lockers. Let me show you my point. I was in here 6 weeks back. Cleaned it out. Check in there. I frowned, but rose and went through the lockers, one after the next. I took a look inside. Not much. A dozen caps, some 10 mil ammo, a coffee cup. No big deal, I said as I returned. He just smiled in a not-so-happy way. Why? You just missed all the little garbage, that's all. Ain't missed nothing a day in my life, he replied firmly. Those lockers were empty when I was last here. So some pony stashed some caps? 12 caps, pretty lousy stash, and 8 bullets? And who would ditch a coffee cup? I looked back at the lockers. I've come across ammo containers I've emptied and tossed aside, now miraculously holding more ammo. Never completely full, always with just enough ammo to keep me going. I've picked locks on safes only to come across them locked and filled with new plunder. I've hacked terminals only to find the passwords changed, found food where we'd cleaned everything out. He grumbled as he took another pull. I know, most folks just assume I'm mistaken, but finding things is my special talent. He pointed at his flank, where a wandering dashed line ended with an X. I remember every place I loot, and I'm telling you, something in this place is fucking with us. A few weeks ago, I would have just snorted at the crazy old buck past his retirement date. Now I was staring at those lockers. If I'd come back in a few days, would there be a few more caps, some scrap metal, and a pencil? But why? Well now, it depends. Professor likes to say maybe the spirit of discord was floating around, putting bottle caps and trash in places just to tease me. The rest didn't think it was a big deal, he muttered sourly with a scowl. Then he sighed and shrugged. But me, I don't like it one bit. It ain't a natural market. So I got to thinking, why do ponies come to Hoofington? I ask that question a lot. Salvage is what I hear the most. Ponies come from all over the wasteland hoping to strike it big. And most of them do. They find the damnedest stuff. He held up the cigar. Take this, for instance. Found 3 of them in a burned-out store. Nice and dry as you please. He puffed on the end as he looked at me. But do they just trot on out of here with it? Does the society export their food all the way to 10 Pony? Does any pony actually ever leave this damned city without a gut full of regret and misery? I stared out of the window at the towers. No, they don't. Ponies, zebras, red-eye, and now enclave. He said softly, we got so many damn ponies living around this city that we've got an actual war brewing. I can't think of any place else in the wasteland that's got a big enough population for a war. But we do. He sighed as he lit another cigar. Eventually, you got to my friends as well. What happened? Glory asked. Dawn, he muttered, then looked at her. Found some buck who'd tumbled from the sky all burned up. Nursed him back to health. Awesome didn't like that one bit. He'd always been sweet on her. So when the buck wanted to go home and offered to take Dawn with him, he blew out a long stream of smoke. Got ugly. Awesome called her a whore. Big Daddy beat the snot out of him. Carrot said she should go. Professor wanted to stay. Dawn left in tears. Glory turned her head away as she sniffed. Mother. I felt lightheaded. Of course, it made sense, but I felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. My pounding head wasn't making thinking any easier. He nodded softly. I figured that might be the case. Same coat, same eyes. Saw you lying there in the road and it took me back. Whatever happened to that little bird? She always wanted a family safe from the wasteland, especially from the hoof. His eyes lingered on her missing wing, sadly. She got one, for a few years, but she kept saying Thunderhead needed to help the surface. She shook her head. She came back years ago. You haven't seen her? Sorry. Pity, too.